All right. Sorry about that, you guys. We'll see if we even get anyone back, because oftentimes if you stop a live stream and then start it over, YouTube won't notify people again. So that little bit of technical difficulty may have snuffed us. All right. So for those of you just tuning in, we had some audio problems. I had to start the stream over, so I'm not going to go back through quite everything, but this is where we left off in part 4. We're now in book 2, chapter 11 of the Corpus Hermeticum. Oh, wait. Did I make these public? Yes. Okay. All right, good. Of the Corpus Hermeticum. And we were talking about how, it can be difficult to understand some of this stuff. It can get a little bit overwhelming because, for example, we were just talking about these circles he's mentioning, breaking through the strength of the circles, and how these circles don't represent one thing. They do, but they represent a sort of holographic manifestation of this one thing throughout all these different systems. And so in order to illustrate that, sometimes the poimander will start explaining things to Hermes without really distinguishing what layer of the circles he's talking about. And once you have your head wrapped around how all of this works, you understand sort of intuitively why that's happening, And the answer brings us to the subject of B.L.P. Kosher and Bob Dylan. 2 Jewish artists that last night, it occurred to me that the 2 best artists I'm aware of at having lines with multiple layers of meaning happen to be Jewish. And Hebrew is a language that has 3 layers of meaning. Each letter has numerical value, and that numerical value can change depending on the position in a word, and dots and accents and whatnot. And also a image, so like a glyph. Dalet is a door, Gimel is a camel, Shin is fire, but not physical fire. And then each is a sound. So it's sort of in their DNA to process things on multiple layers with language. And this is actually the main reason that the occult, the Western occult tradition, has integrated Hebrew as kind of the fundamental language of symbolism. Because this ability to compress information into layered, symbols is tremendously valuable if your goal is to expand your consciousness. That actually has to do with being able to process more layers. People talk about mystics being deep. That's exactly the thing. You're not looking at the surface level. You're processing this on multiple levels. Let me check in with the chat, make sure our audio issues are resolved. Are we doing all right, guys? Can somebody let me know if I resolved the audio chopping? Is this the same? What do we got here? This one and this one. Okay. I'm sure I did. I mean, I know what the thing was. So, before we get into any further, because I can see the term the 7 governors on the page, for those that are not familiar with this subject, the 7 governors are similar to the archons in Gnosticism. And Hermeticism really is a less paranoid form of Gnosticism. There's really no point in arguing about which came first, because there's no real fundamental difference as far as the underlying theme. My suspicion is that the Gnostics became more paranoid because of persecution, right? According to Morals and Dogma, or Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma, Archon was a type of magistrate in Rome that was tasked with going to destroy the mysteries and basically to persecute the Gnostics. And so they created a mythological version of that, the Archons, and made them their deities, which are the kind of the equivalent of the 7 governors. The difference is in Hermeticism, these are more of influences that control fate and influence. They regulate or represent the laws of nature. They don't act in malice like these archons of the Gnostics do. Also, the demi-orgos, the version of that we have in Hermeticism, is not really viewed as malicious. It's just more of an intermediary, with similar characteristics to like a God mode human or something. And so, let's continue. So, what was happening exactly? We were talking about the mind, which is the workman, and the circles. And he was talking about these circles in different levels, because on one level, he's talking about the fundamental level of mind, where there's an oscillating wave that is compelling the chaotic energy of the primordial stew to form and function through symmetry and into order. And on another level, he was talking about the circles of nature, biology, and species. And on another level, he was talking about the wheels with eyeballs all over in the throne of Ezekiel, or what would become the throne of Ezekiel. And he was also implying that God is a circle, which I think, is it Nietzsche that echoed that? God is a circle whose circumference is everywhere and center is nowhere. Or center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere. It doesn't really matter which way you say it. One of them's better, but which when he saw, having in itself the unsatiable beauty and all the operations of the 7 governors and the form or shape of God, he smiled for love, as if he had seen the shape or likeness in the water or the shadow upon the earth and the fairest human form. And seeing in the water a shape like unto himself, in himself he loved it, and would cohabit with it. And immediately upon the resolution ensued that operation and brought forth the unreasonable image or shape. Is this what I think it is? Hold on. I'm going to withhold my commentary for a moment. Nature, presently laying hold of what it so much loved, did wholly wrap herself about it. I knew it. And they were mingled, for they loved one another. The reasonable creature and the unreasonable creature, nature. Man, I'm just going to move right along. I don't feel like getting canceled this year. And from this cause, man above all things that live upon earth is double, mortal because of his body and immortal because of the substantial man. For being immortal and having power of all things, he yet suffers mortal things, and such as are subject to fate or destiny. And that's an interesting subject, and forgive me if I mentioned this last time. This will probably happen a lot throughout the series because these ideas are repeated a lot. But I think just last year or something, it hit me that maybe the best anecdotal evidence we have for life after death is that if we assume, and we don't have to assume based on faith, it's very easy to observe that everything does contain its contradiction, and that the universe is made up of antinomies, right, opposites that are interacting. And so if all of these things are true and false, and it is both true and false to say that they are true and false, and everything contains its contradiction, then because we die, that is our best evidence that we are actually immortal. That because the body dies, it must be true that we also are immortal. And of course, the skeptic would say that that is lunatic logic. And that's fair to an extent. But the argument, of course, is to go through all these years of initiation and study all the sciences and read all these philosophies, and then you'll understand, It is one of those things that I think with science, one of the benefits you have is that as you move through the process of initiation and up the hierarchy, the information can be kind of processed as it comes. A lot of this stuff is actually kind of in reverse, where you might encounter an idea and then you have to kind of unfold it for a while before. And really, that happens in science too. That's the whole hypothesis thing, right? Anyways, you guys understand what I'm getting at here. It takes a tremendous amount of contemplation and observation to see the truth in some of these paradoxical statements, you know? And it's a frustrating thing because the paradox is really one of the fundamental keys to unlocking the understanding of the whole thing. And I think also really that whole problem, that dissonance that we have as culturally with paradox, you know, black or white, Republican or Democrat, religious or atheist. You know what I mean? The matrix muggle mind does not seem to embrace these kind of more subtle possibilities. They much prefer negative or positive, black or white, you know. It's not all this gray matter. All this gray matter is unpleasant for much of the muggle population. And from this cause, man above all things that lives upon earth is double, mortal because of his body and immortal because of the substantial man. For being immortal and having power of all things, he yet suffers mortal things, such as are subject to fate or destiny. And therefore, being above all harmony, he is made and become a servant to harmony. And being hermaphrodite or male and female and watchful, he is governed by and subjected to a father that is both male and female and watchful. Now, isn't this a hot button thing to be getting into at the moment? The God of the Bible, Genesis, is not male. Not according to the 8 or 10 different names that are applied to this being. Some of them are plural, some of them are female, some of them are masculine, and basically imply androgyny. And so the whole Christian right thing of there are two genders and we're made in God's image and shit, and it's no. If you're reading the same Bible I'm reading, you're made in the image of an androgynous collective. So that doesn't make sense. Everything is composed of antinomies. Everyone has male and female qualities. Some men lean, even straight men, heavily in the direction of femininity, and vice versa. So, this is another reason that this stuff can be very problematic. And the hermetic secret societies like the Illuminati, the Templars, the Freemasons, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Blavatsky, her, not really an order, but group or collective. Evil Luciferian, no. And actually, the precursor to this Bible that is demonizing all of this stuff to this day. And in a way, I see what's happening with the political stuff with gender and trans people. And on the one hand, it's being manipulated to cause political division and foment dissonance. On the other hand, if you're just logical and you think without our biases, without our prejudice, without the influence of religion, Judeo-Christian and Islam and these religions, where our society provides us with more and more comfort as we eliminate crime, as we eliminate the need for physical labor, evolving towards a more androgynous collective is the obvious fucking end result. And if we are a reflection of this being, this intelligence, and its nature, which makes sense to me, is that it's everything. People like to describe God as love and light, and and I'm like, no, that yes, but also, oh my God, I have this demonic sounding voice modulator. I almost turned it on to say that, but it's just too much. I forgot I changed, I'd have to change settings and stuff, and it wouldn't have been quick and clever enough. I can't wait to use it on Saturday, though. It's the most demonic sounding thing I've ever heard in my life, and I found it on accident. It's amazing. But you know what I mean? It makes sense. In fact, in the Book of the Law by Aleister Crowley, he mentioned that one of the ways that we'll know that we are thoroughly in the new aeon is that there will be people that are non-binary. There will be more and more and more of them. And people will be, as a rule, bisexual instead of, and people are seeing this explosion of this and blaming it on the left. I don't think so, honestly. It's evolution. What the machine is doing with it, however, and it's actually the right that's doing this, they're using their propaganda outlets like the mainstream media to latch onto this thing and make it appear to be a government conspiracy driving it and warping it and twisting it. And, if you just stop and think about it for a second, that makes way more sense. People, the herd, they don't think of anything. They don't think of anything. They just follow whatever narratives they're being fed, So, on the one hand, it's a natural process, and it is a reflection of the holistic being of the universal mind. Anyways, I don't want to get too hung up on this. But it's something that I have to talk about because I know some people, as soon as I go there, are going to click away, and you know what I mean? That's the stuff that we have to be confronting. Because the simple explanation is always wrong. That it's just blue-haired like lefties that want to give their kids sex changes that are driving all this weirdness. Way more complicated than that. It's a natural expression of evolution that's being exploited by people that are actually more on the right, that control all the media and whatnot, trying to demonize the left and this process of nature, which they've always hated and sought to destroy and oppress. So, this is one fierce jacket, isn't it? It's actually our roommate's. He's out of town, so I snatched it up. He might even see me wearing it. Let's see. After these things I said, "Thou art my mind, and I am in love with reason." Then said Pymander, it's crazy how the spelling keeps changing. It says Poimander, sometimes P-Y-mander or P-I-mander, P-O-P-O-E. Then said Pymander, this is the mystery that to this day is hidden and kept secret. For nature, being mingled with man, brought forth a wonder most wonderful. For he having the nature of the harmony of the seven, for him whom I told thee, the fire and the spirit, nature continued not. But forthwith brought forth 7 men, all males and females, and sublime or on high, according to the natures of the 7 governors. Very laggy, guys, sorry. Check in with the chat again, see. Not much going on tonight, huh? Oh, May, how's it going? It's been a while. Good to see you back. All right, so where are we? And after these things, O Pymander, quoth I am now come into a great desire and longing to hear. Do not digress or run out. But he said, keep silence, for I have not yet finished the first speech. Trism, behold, I am silent. Pim, the generation therefore of these 7 was after this manner. The air being feminine, and the water desirous of copulation, took from the fire its ripeness, and from the ether spirit, and so nature produced bodies after the species and shape of men. I'm a little bit confused about this air being feminine and water. It doesn't say masculine, but I think that's what's being implied. Nowhere on earth that I'm aware of is air feminine and water masculine. So that's interesting. And man was made of life and light, into soul and mind, of life the soul, of light the mind. And so all the members of the sensible world, continuing into the period of the end, bearing rule and generating. Hear now the rest of that speech thou so much desireth to hear. When the period was fulfilled, the bond of all things was loosed and untied by the will of God. For all living creatures became hermaphroditical, or male and female, were loosed and untied together within man, and so the males were apart by themselves, and the females likewise. And the thing is, wherever it begins, where it ends depends on where it begins, right? The Alpha and the Omega. The only moment when God is fully, totally manifest is at the final. How do they put it in the Pythagorean Illuminati? Oh man, I can't remember the term. It's a great word for this, but the moment of apocalypse, I guess you could say, on the universal scale. That's the Alpha and the Omega, The beginning and the ending is one thing. And so what I was just talking about us kind of congealing in a hermaphroditic uber-mensch-ish thing, it just makes sense, And straightways God said to the holy word, increase and increasing and multiplying in multitude, all you my creatures and workmanships. And let him that is endued with mind, I think that should say endowed, know himself to be immortal, and that the cause of death is the love of the body, and let him learn all things that are. And when he had thus said, providence by fate of harmony made the mixtures and established the generations, and all things were multiplied according to their kind. And he that knew himself came at length to the superstantial of every way substantial good. But he that through the error of love loved the body abideth wandering in darkness, sensible, suffering the things of death. Trism. But why do they that are ignorant sin so much, that they should therefore be deprived of immortality? Pim, thou seemest not to have understood what thou hast heard. Oh, I get it. Trismegistus. You guys know who's talking. Peradventure I seem to be thee, but I both understand and remember them. Oh, I seem to understand to you, he's saying. So then the Pymander says, I am glad for thy sake if thou understoodest them. Tell me, why are they worthy of death that are in death? Because there goeth a sad and dismal darkness before its body, of which darkness is the moist nature, of which moist nature the body consisteth in the sensible world, and whence death is derived. Hast thou understood this aright? But why or how doth he that understands himself go or pass unto God? That which the word of God said, say I, because the Father of all things consists of life and light, whereof man is made. Do you guys, I feel like I don't really need to explain, he's basically talking about, well, your electromagnetic energy, so there's magnetism and that's just... And it's really the same underlying thing that allows a herd of, whatever animal you want to name in Africa, all those giant herds that go wandering around and they know where they're going all the time. And, it's the same fundamental force that allows them to procreate, that allows them to maintain their groups, and allows them to find their direction. And really, what is it? It is knowledge that is not dependent upon any dispensation, It's just integrated into that electromagnetic energy. We have been noticing increasingly, it seems, over the last few months or years that animals and plants are doing things that we would not have imagined that they could possibly be doing. We are also observing, oh God, I was just watching a video about mitochondria the other day. And these are bacteria basically, but they're, really, really primitive form. And they have no neurons. In fact, they are part of neurons. But they don't have any neurons, and they are capable of collective behavior, of communication, and all sorts of behaviors that should be beyond the ability, memory, of any organism that doesn't have neurons. The Father is light and life, electromagnetic energy. If therefore thou learn and believe thyself to be of that life and light, thou shalt again pass into life. Tell me more, O my mind, how I shall go into life. I love that too. Oh my mind. Tell me more, oh my mind. Not my God or the angel spoke thus or whatever. Tell me more, my mind. God saith, let man endowed with a mind mark, consider, and know himself well. Have not all men a mind? Take heed what thou sayest, for I, the mind, come unto men that are holy and good, pure and merciful, and that live piously and religiously, and my presence is a help unto them. And forthwith they know all things, and lovingly they supplicate and propitiate the Father. And blessing him, they give him thanks and sing hymns unto him, being ordered and directed by filial affection and natural love. And before they give up their body, they hate their senses, knowing their works and operations. Rather, I that am the mind itself will not suffer the operations or works which happen or belong to the body to be finished and brought to perfection in them, but being the porter or doorkeeper, I will shut up the entrances of evil and cut off the thoughtful desires of filthy works. But to the foolish and evil and wicked and envious and covetous and murderous and profane, I am far off, giving place to the revenging demon, which applying unto him the sharpness of fire tormenteth such a man sensible, and armeth him the more to all wickedness, that he may obtain the greater punishment. Ooh, that's gnarly, man. Yeah, you guys understand what he's saying? Basically, the evil and the sacrifice that comes with it. This is actually something that's worth talking about, I guess, in a couple of different arenas. So, but that last thing about the demon, is that the more this evil person gets what they want, the more they're arming this demon to cause them to suffer, And this is the mystery of the left-hand path and the right-hand path. Knowledge of the eagle and the lion, which it is not permissible to speak in this place. But basically, the problem with the left-hand path is that there's no compensation, right? You're not giving anything back. You're just taking and taking and taking. And this compensation is what maintains the homeostasis and the health of the body. It's almost as if you ate your whole life without ever taking a dump. It's kind of the same idea. And the idea of the Black Brothers, or the belief about them, is that they are able to acquire earthly pleasures and whatever kind of stuff that they want through whatever means necessary, and they're not even necessarily punished for it because they are losing the continuity of awareness. They are drinking a fatal dose from the river of forgetfulness. They will not continue to reincarnate. Their electromagnetic husk will be added to the rubble heap of Karanzan, the demon of confusion, from where the body of new initiates will be constructed. So that's kind of what he's hinting at here. And such a one never ceaseth, having unfulfilled desires and unsatisfiable concupiscences, and always fighting in darkness, for the demon always afflicts and tormenteth him continually, and increaseth the fire upon him more and more. Thou hast, O mind, most excellently taught me all these things, and as I desired. But tell me, moreover, after the return is made, what then? First of all, in the resolution of the material body, the body itself is given up to alteration, and the form which it had becomes invisible, and the idle manners are permitted and left to the demon, and the senses of the body return into their fountains, being parts again made up into other operations. That was weird. Maybe I don't need to make the commentary, because that's like the third time tonight that I've said something and we go and we move on and it's about whatever maybe I've just stored this in my subconscious over the last 20 years and I don't know, it's a little bit eerie. First of all, in the resolution of the material body, the body itself is, we already read that. Okay, so that's exactly what I was saying about the soul of the Black Brother, right? The electromagnetic husk that, this doing of evil, that is actually sowing the seeds of good, by the way, because everything generates its opposite, making the Black Brothers kind of the saviors of the world in a weird, twisted sense, but literally. They're making the ultimate sacrifice of the continuity of consciousness in exchange for this temporary dross. But then this answer was as to the physical part, but as above, so below, as within, so without, and beyond, I imagine. So, he's talking about both ways, that the physical body rots into the ground and nourishes the world and the plants and whatever, and the spirit becomes fuel for other operations. And anger and concupiscence go into the brutish or unreasonable nature, and the rest striveth upward by harmony. And to the first zone it giveth the power it had of increasing and diminishing. To the second, the machinations or plotting of evils, and one effectual deceit or craft. To the third, the idle deceit of concupiscence. What the hell is concupiscence? Concupiscence? Is this just an old school spelling? To the fourth, the desire of rule and unsatiable ambition. To the fifth, profane boldness and the headlong rashness of confidence. To the sixth, evil and ineffectual occasions of riches. To the seventh zone, subtle falsehood, always lying in wait. And then being made naked of all the operations of harmony, it cometh to the eighth nature, having its proper power, and singeth praises to the Father with the things that are, and all they that are present rejoice and congratulate the coming of it, and being made like to them it converseth. It heareth also the powers that are above the eighth nature, praising God in a certain voice that is peculiar to them. And then in order they return unto the Father, and themselves deliver themselves to the powers, and becoming powers, they are in God. This is the good, and to them that know, to be desired. Furthermore, why sayest thou, what resteth, but that understanding all men thou become a guide, and way leader to them that are worthy, that the kind of humanity or mankind may be saved by God. When Pymander had thus said unto me, he was mingled among the powers. And I, giving thanks and blessing the Father of all things, rose up, being enabled by him, and taught the nature of the whole, and having seen the greatest sight or spectacle. And I began to preach unto men the beauty and fairness of piety and knowledge. O ye people, men born and made of the earth, which have given yourselves over to the drunkenness and sleep, and to the ignorance of God, be sober and cease your surfeit, whereunto you are allured and visited by brutish and unreasonable sleep. That's nice. And they that heard me come willingly and with one accord, and they said further, then I said further, why, O men of the offspring of earth, why have you delivered yourselves over unto death, having power to partake of immortality? Repent and change your minds, you that have together walked in error, and have been darkened in ignorance. Depart from that dark light. Be partakers of immortality, and leave or forsake corruption. And some of them that heard me, mocking and scorning, went away, and delivered themselves up to the way of death. But others, casting themselves down before my feet, besought me that they might be taught. But I, causing them to rise up, became a guide of mankind, teaching them the reasons how and by what means they might be saved. And I sowed in them the words of wisdom, and nourished them with ambrosian water of immortality. This was probably the beverage in the kykeon, which I think was acacia and Syrian rue. And when it was evening, and the brightness of the same began wholly to go down. Wait a minute. Was there a clue there? The brightness of evening, or is the ambrosian water of immortality the light of the sun? So I commanded them to give thanks to God, and when they had finished their thanksgiving, everyone returned to his own lodging. But I wrote in myself the bounty and benevolence of the Pymander, and being filled with what I most desired, I was exceedingly glad. For the sleep of the body was the sober watchfulness of the mind, and the shutting of my eyes the true sight. My silence great with child and full of good, pronouncing of my words the blossoms and fruit of good things. Again, there's a reference to that the opposites. I close my eyes to see. Oh, there's an amazing Grateful Dead song called Addicts of My Life. When there were no strings to play, you played to me. When I had no wings to fly. It's really, really good. But he says, I shut my eyes to hear and close my eyes to see, or something. A lot of the stuff from this passage here, and I was just noticing that that's where they got it. No surprise there, really. And thus it came to pass, or happened unto me, which I received from my mind. This is Pymander, the Lord of the Word, whereby I became inspired by God with the truth, for which cause with my soul and the whole strength I give praise and blessing unto God the Father. Getting a little bit worn out with all this religiousness. This is what I meant when I started this thing, that, there's a lot of solid old hermetic secret doctrine stuff in here, but they go off the deep end with the sort of, religious stuff at times. Holy is God, the Father of all things. Holy is God, whose will is performed and accomplished by his own powers. Holy is God that determineth to be known and is known of his own, or those that are his. Only the chosen shall see. Holy art thou, that by the word hast established all things. Holy art thou, of whom all nature is the image. And this became the hermetic prayer that you open the LBRP with. Holy art thou. Now I'm not going to be able to remember it because I'm on the spot or whatever. Holy art thou. Holy art thou, Lord of the universe. Holy art thou, whom nature hath not formed, Lord of the light and Lord of the darkness. It's basically just a re-engineering of this little bit here. Holy art thou that are stronger than all power. Holy art thou that are stronger than all excellency. Holy art thou that art better than all praise. Accept these reasonable sacrifices from a pure soul and a heart that stretched out unto thee. O unspeakable, unutterable, to be praised with silence. I beseech thee that I may never err from the knowledge of thee. Look mercifully upon me and enable me and enlighten with this grace those that are in ignorance, the brothers of my kind, but thy sons. Therefore I believe thee and bear witness, and go into the life and the light. Blessed art thou, O Father. Thy man would be sanctified with thee, as thou hast given him all power. The Holy Sermon. Shall we continue? Let's see how we have. I admire critical thinkers. I particularly admire critical thinkers that have some, open-mindedness towards, things beyond the approved narrative. Should we keep going? Yeah, it's only been 39 minutes. I guess we'll do, because I put in the thumbnail, it's the second book, but this is also, it's going to also include some of the third book, I guess, which is fine. Yeah, let's continue for at least another 20 minutes or so. The third book, called The Holy Sermon. The glory of all things, God and that which is divine, and the divine nature, the beginning of things that are. God and the mind and nature and matter and operation or working and necessity, and the end and renovation. For there were in the chaos an infinite darkness in the abyss or bottomless depth and water, a subtle spirit, intelligible in power, and there went out the holy light, and the elements were coagulated from the sand out of the moist substance. This is, exactly the thing that blows my mind so much about these old writings. It's not 100% like concise or certain even, But in the beginning, when Hermes first meets the Pymander, the Poimander, whatever he is, the Dragon of Light, it says that basically light, that matter is light in a standing wave, it comes as close to saying that as you can without having that language. And now again, we see this, that this moist substance is the gases that preceded the coagulation of the sand matter out of the primordial soup. And the subtle spirit that was intelligible in this power, at first at least, was as simple as a symmetrical oscillation of a wave compelling the chaos to order and symmetry. You know, this description is 100% consistent with science. And science isn't wrong. Neither is the Corpus Hermeticum. And the only reason the Bible has any of it is because it was stolen from the Corpus Hermeticum. And all the gods distinguished the nature full of seeds. And when all things were intermated and unmade up, the light things were divided on high, and the heavy things were founded upon the moist sand, all things being terminated or divided by fire, and being sustained or hung up by the Spirit. They were so carried, and the heaven was seen in 7 circles. And the gods were seen in their ideas of the stars, with all their signs, and the stars were numbered with the gods in them. And the sphere was all lined with air, carried about in circular motion by the Spirit of God. And basically what's being expressed there, you know, like some people believe that 666 is just a solar number. It's just like and look, it's number 6. I don't know what you call this, the passage. But, you know, one of the ideas here is that the stars are gods almost, something like that, something like the demiurgos, the physical expression of it. And, you know, Modest Mouse even has a song where he says the stars are projectors. And that's basically the idea, that the field, the electromagnetic field has points of density, like vectors, where it's sort of bunched up, and those are particles. And that is the microcosmic level of this. But that's the most fundamental, smallest place where we have function, right? And then on another level, we have brains full of magnetite, which creates a point of density in the electromagnetic field. And that's why we have more complex consciousness than, say, a slug who has almost no magnetite or none. You know what I mean? It's the density, the point of density in the field is barely there. Dog magnetite. I mean, I don't know if there's been studies done on this, like the concentration of magnetite in higher orders of, you know, thinking creatures, but I fucking guarantee that it, you know, I'm sure of it. And in fact, maybe I'll check right now. I'll check, and then next stream I'll talk about it because I don't feel like messing with it. But okay, so but then you continue this on up, and you have what? Stars, and the point of density of electromagnetic energy. This vector is huge, and so, you know, kind of along these lines, the idea that Sirius B is transmitting knowledge to adepts across the universe, you know, is found in Hopi, the sequoia in South America, the Egyptians and Babylonians. I've experienced it in ways that are mind-boggling. You know, there's the Freemasons have a connection to this. So, but Sirius is like what, 300 or 3,000 times the size of our sun or something, and it's like 3,000 times as hot. I think it's 3,000 times as hot, and I can't remember how many orders of magnitude larger. So if this theory is correct, that would be a massive source of like really highly oscillating consciousness, and that would explain why everyone that, you know, really manages to break down the filters in their mind starts receiving information from Sirius, you know, or at least that's the most common claim, and definitely in disparate cultures. I mean, the Kofan in South America, they're in the middle of nowhere not the Kofan, I'm sorry, the sequoia. It's the sequoia. Middle of nowhere, Amazon. And when they drink ayahuasca, they point to Sirius and say, well, we communicate with beings there that tell us all this stuff when we drink ayahuasca. And I drank ayahuasca before I knew that. And I had this experience where I received information about the astrophysics of the third celestial body that hadn't even been published yet. It was like 10 days later that it was published. And it was all exactly right. And I know nothing about astrophysics, so it doesn't, you know what I mean? And then I was streaming about it, and somebody in the comments was like, hey, you know, the sequoia. So I checked into it and was able to confirm that, yeah, the sequoias say the same thing. So you know what I mean? There's all of this stuff hypothetically adds up, you know? And every god, by his internal power, did that which was commanded him. And there were made four-footed things and creeping things, and such as live in the water and as fly. And every fruitful seed and grass and the flowers of all greens, all which had sowed in themselves the seeds of regeneration. As also the generations of men to the knowledge of the divine works, and a lively or working testimony of nature, and a multitude of men, and the dominion of all things under heaven, and the knowledge of good things, and to be increased and increasing, and multiplied in multitude. And every soul in flesh, by the wonderful workings of the gods in the circles to the beholding of heaven, the gods' divine works and the operations of nature, and for signs of good things, and the knowledge of the divine power, and to find out every cunning workmanship of good things. And so it beginneth to live in them, and to be wise according to the operation of the course of the circular gods, and to be resolved into that which shall be great monuments and remembrances of the cunning works done upon earth, leaving them to be read by the darkness of times. And so, what he's really saying there is that this consciousness, this awareness, with its intuitive knowledge of trigonometry and calculus and basic math and woodworking and all the things that it accumulates, this resides in the men and allows them to engage in works that are reflections of the macrocosm, but also ways for this intelligence that has integrated itself into the plants and the trees and the rocks and the humans to explore itself and to have this sort of journey of self-discovery, which is what the universe is doing, and that's what every individual person is doing. This is why the Pymander ordered Hermes to know himself and to be like, the creator, because that's what it's doing. It's got to know itself so it knows its limitations, its potentials, its predilections and predispositions, inclinations, and then it can express through all those things and fulfill all of the potentials that are available to it without having to come into conflict with the strictures imposed upon its creation by the necessity of natural law. And so it beginneth to live in them and to be wise according to the operation of the course of the circular gods. Right? And it starts to live in them and to be wise. It's this intelligence. And I've theorized for a long time that, the only way I could make sense out of a God in the universe was that it developed in step with its creation. So we started out with this very fundamental oscillating wave and then built-in complexity. And then what we think of as the universal mind is developing as a reaction to that process, or otherwise it wouldn't be happening. Nothing happens without necessity. There's a reason for it, and that's the reason. And that's what he's saying there, that this thing living in us becomes wise through its operations and experiences. And every generation of living flesh of fruit, seed, and all handicrafts, though they be lost, must of necessity be renewed by the renovation of the gods and the nature of a circle, moving in number, for it is a divine thing that every worldly temperature should be renewed by nature. For in that which is divine is nature also established. The end of the fragments of the third book. Very imperfect, but is identical with all formal translations and editions, and which I believed would be considered more generally acceptable if presented in its original facsimile rendering than supplemented as was suggested by any additions from current modern spiritual mediumistic sources. Hell no. Do not do that. All right. Well, we are going to... Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah, this is just going to keep getting better and better. So let me pop into the chat. Let me make some adjustments in my OBS so that I am prettier for everyone. Hey, where's my, there it is. Put that up there. Son of a bitch. What are you doing? Oh, I want to go. I don't get it, man. It won't move. There we go. Howdy, howdy. Check, check. Okay, good. All right, so now I can look at the chat and maybe interface with you guys. So if anybody has any questions, if there's anything that you feel like you need to have explained or broken down a little bit, what do you think of the Gnostics' view of Yahweh being a malevolent demiurge masquerading as a one true God and keeps souls trapped in the material world? I think a clue to that is in the fact that the archons actually turned out to be human beings. Think about that. So who is this Yahweh that is manipulating politics and, subverting illumination and demonizing those that seek to ameliorate people from the mind-forged manacles of culture and bigotry and suspicion and religion and blah, 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 you know what I mean? I think that that's a very good possibility, that all of that stuff was just allegories and metaphorical references to real people that are doing things, I'm not going to get too much into it now because I have a whole series of streams to do, and I don't mean in reference to this one, but I have my yearly anti-Christian Christmas streams that are usually like 6 hours long, and there's one on Christmas Eve and another one on Christmas Day because I have that much to say about it. So I want to save some of those details for that, so this isn't too redundant. So, yeah, I mean, what I was just reading from that book, if you compare the way the respect for nature, the constant encouragement to pursue knowledge of sciences and mathematics, and versus the mentality of modern religions, institutionalized religions, you can see there are clearly humans that have turned this stuff to their own purposes, and the charge of the archons by the Roman consulate was to not only subvert the mysteries and destroy them, but to steal their secrets so they could create a religion called Christianity, because they knew from having infiltrated the mysteries, things about psychology, this is actually how one of the main ways the governments got so far ahead of the population. Right? Because the mystery adepts had psychedelics and they had, passed down this knowledge and all this stuff. So they knew more about manipulating minds than probably anyone. And really, knowledge of divinity is really knowledge of mind, how it all works. It's kind of one and the same thing. You notice that Hermes kept calling the Poimander my mind. So anyways, one of the things they learned from infiltrating the mysteries is that if people hear the truth, they know it's the truth because it's really obvious. And as the Hermes said in that second book towards the end, that this universal mind lives within us. It is what lives. It is not us that lives, it is it that lives, So it's in there. And it knows, And so they realized that if they made a religion that had more stuff sprinkled throughout it, that's why Jesus is based on the sun. He is the light of the world. He walks on water, 3 days on the Southern Cross and the whole thing. They knew what they were doing, And a pope around the time the Bible was written, just a couple centuries later, actually said that we did this because the people need the truth veiled in myth. A pope called Christianity a fucking myth publicly. So anyways, we're going to get more in depth into all of that on Christmas Eve. Hail Satan. Let's see. Do you think there is an endpoint to this knowledge? Sort of. Hold on. I got to catch up a little bit. Okay. What do you think about people living in their scripted simulation and others breaking free from it? This is not really such a terrible situation. I felt that way for a long time, that, we have to wake them all up and, this is not good. But the reality is the pyramid is not an evil shape. The Illuminati did not adopt the eye on top of the pyramid because they're assholes and they wanted to enslave everyone. That's not what it's about. It's about natural law and necessity, right? The geometry that allows a pyramid to stand for however many thousands of years, and I'm not even going to say because there's so much argument about it, but it is the most stable geometrical shape that we have at our disposal. So if you're going to build a society, if you're going to build a culture, if you're going to build an economy, you're going to do it in the shape of a pyramid. And even if you don't deliberately do it that way, it's going to kind of naturally tend to assume that structure, and for good reason. When you go into a diamond mine, you find carbon, and coal, and there's tiny, tiny, tiny little bits of diamond in there. If you have a million musicians, you have one Jerry Garcia, one Bach, one, you know what I mean? And there's a good reason for that. We may be able to raise the floor, but this kind of structure of the universe is actually the way it has to be. And that is what the law of necessity is, why one of the reasons it's really so valuable. All of these things that we look out into the world and we see and they don't make any sense, and we think, my God, this is all evil. How could there be any awareness? And the answer, according to Hermeticism, basically is that, there was absolute nothingness, which is what is required if you're going to, because any shadow or stain or blemish or disruption of the continuity of nothingness is not perfection. So your choices are either eternal nothingness or duality with the laws as they are, and in order to create the balance to make this place substantial, equal parts opposites of everything, right? And all of these other laws that dictate things like 1% has most of the money, 1% contains the concentrated genius, 1%, you know what I mean? 1% of the diamond mine actually has diamond. It's all the thing. It's one thing expressing itself in all of these different arenas, but subjected to the same laws and expressing in the same way. And so things are getting a little bit weird right now because we have, I read today that AGI may already exist. One of the AI companies has said that they have created AGI, which, for those of you that aren't familiar, is basically AI that can do anything a human can do as well or better. Anything. So we're already, as of like today, according to this one company, we're obsolete. Right? And then, we're wasting the planet. The oceans are almost entirely dead and all that stuff. And have you saying that shit because they want to be able to keep doing it. Don't be stupid. It's almost as bad as flat Earth when people are, like funding billionaires and saying that, we don't need to protect the planet. It's, there's plenty of room for everyone. We don't need to depopulate. Hold on, guys. Let me see if I can fix that. All right, we should have voice again, and give me a second, and I'll get the. That's too bad because that was an important important bit that we're getting to there. There's that camera. There we go. Why did it have to freeze me in such an unflattering pose? Gosh. And action. All right, so I don't know where I lost you, which is unfortunate. If somebody can bring, or I guess I could look back at the stream and see. Yeah, it's the most structurally strong shape, but you have to understand that these things apply to everything else too. So if it's the most structurally strong physical shape, it's the best shape for you to build an economy onto. You know, that's the whole point of Taoism and, you know, any of this kind of wisdom that's based on, that's the whole point of all of it, you know. That's what this knowledge is fundamentally about, really. But it's actually 9 o'clock, and let's see. I'll give you guys a couple seconds or minutes to. Oh, okay. I'll answer at least the questions that are already in the chat. Do you think there is an endpoint to this knowledge? Kind of. Are things becoming easier for you guys too? Things are making sense that I never thought I'd figure out. Yes, Jennifer. Especially in the last couple of weeks since the last Mercury retrograde ended. Last night I thought, man, a Mercury retrograde must have ended. And I'm not a huge astrology person, but I've noticed every time things go apeshit, I've thought, I wonder if Mercury's in retrograde. I look it up, and every time it turns out that it is. And this time I thought, I bet it ended a couple days ago because things suddenly just like all started coming together again. Sure enough, 3 days ago. Okay, so the endpoint to this knowledge. The universe, at least experientially, is not infinite. Because there are only a finite number of possibilities as long as there are the natural laws that govern the universe, right? So, you know, I've always had this feeling that the universe was, its purpose was basically to generate or to fulfill all of the possibilities that are available to it without having to override natural law, because it can't, you know. And so the terminology for that is the alpha point and the omega point, the beginning and the end, which are actually the same. And we actually have a correspondence in physics, the quantum loop theory and variants of it. And the idea basically being that, you know, the thing expands to a certain point, and then there's nowhere for it to go anymore, and then it collapses back into the singularity, and then the Big Bang happens again, and systole, diastole, phoenix process, you know, however you want to think about it. It's just this infinite recycling of this energy, and variations between cycles are very minute, right? So yeah, there is a limit to the knowledge relative to the potential that is offered to us by the universe as it's currently formulated, but that will change, you know. So the process is eternal, but the stages obviously are temporal. Oh, yeah. So somebody was asking about the NPCs. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we already kind of addressed that. You know, I just said that, you know, some people waking up and some people not. If everyone woke up too soon, everything would stop. There would be nobody to bag your groceries, and a lot of people would just go nuts. You know, a person that isn't in a capacity, for example, to engineer their life to where they have their own freedom and independence and sovereignty. You know, if you tried to stick me in a 9-to-5 job, you know, it's just, you know what I mean? You can't do that after a certain point. the deliberated mind, or even really be part of a society in a way. If that society is not free and liberated and illuminated, there's nothing but alienation everywhere you look. There's nowhere to turn. So, the law of necessity, the principle of sufficient reason, everything in the universe is as it is because it should be. If you start from that point of view and then work backwards, which can get you in trouble, it's not the only process of evaluation that you go through with your ideas, but it is one thing. And in this case, it definitely is valid that if it had happened any sooner, society would have collapsed. And that's what they were worried about in the 60s. People thought, oh, well, they're just trying to oppress the hippies and whatnot. More to it than that. Way more to it than that. If people all suddenly are illuminated and they're like, what? I'm a sovereign being. You can't tell me what the fuck to do, and I'm not going to steal or rob from anyone, so you can't tell me what I can and can't smoke. And you know what I mean? Like that kind of, you can't have that on too large of a scale too soon. And what I was getting at with the AI and all of that stuff is that maybe we're about to move into a position where things are going to be automated to an extent that having a large population of illuminated people is good, but they're going to trim the fat first. Because we can't have 9 billion people using resources and, not really generating a lot of meaning outside of just very small groups. And we don't need it anymore. We used to need these massive populations to fuel the economy, to drive the development of technology and whatnot. That's no longer necessary. So, I have that bleeding heart liberal in me just as much as anyone else, but the reality is that looking at it from the point of view of nature and evolution, a gigantic population of human beings is just completely not what the doctor ordered right now. And definitely is not going to fit in the near future in any way, shape, or form. That's just not something that's on the table. Something I said caused a couple of people look like to unlike the video too. Not like I really care. I say these things because the people that need to know them need to know them. And the people that can't handle hearing it probably about to be subjected to de-emphasis and de-evolution. That's not my fault. No, I'm actually not in the rainforest anymore. I am, what did Crowley say? Society only moves by the light of genius. The herd will be destroyed in mass. He wasn't wrong. The wood will burn, yeah. I mean, that's, it sounds cold, but it's just nature. It's not. And I hate when I talk about this stuff, like people will sometimes attack me and like, oh, this is what you want and shit. And it's like, this is what I've observed. This is what nature and common sense and, and necessity is telling me. It's got nothing to fucking do with what I think is right or wrong. It's irrelevant. It's got nothing to do with anything. That's not, you can try to, right and wrong should guide your personal life. But on a grand scale, morality's got jack shit to do with anything, and there's nothing anyone will ever be able to do about it. That kind of God that would manage that kind of stuff does not exist. And, that's just how it is. So thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I have to go because I have to make sure that on Saturday I have all my music totally legit. And then, I promised my partner, because I've been working obsessively on this, after that, I'm taking a break. I'm going to stream for much longer periods and much more frequently every week and replace some parts of my computer, so hopefully we won't have so many technical problems. And we're really going to start diving more heavily into this stuff. And I'm not pulling any punches anymore because I used to depend more on YouTube than I do now. So I'm kind of like more free to say what I think instead of, trying to edit myself on the fly. I don't think that's in our best interest. So put on your gloves. Join me Saturday. I do need a bunch of surgeries, and we're doing better in general, but it's like Hermes pointed out in the Pymander that You can align yourself with all this godlike energy, and you're still going to be afflicted by the things of the corporal body and mortality. And that's definitely true. So, yeah, anyways, I've been working hella hard on it, and it would be nice to see all you guys. So please do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron, and there are also ways for you to support with a one-time contribution in the chat, and I'll see you guys on Saturday.